The scary thing about Saitama's Infinite Power Part 2. If you haven't seen Part 1, go in the description box down below and check it out, where I kind of break down a lot of the fundamentals as to why Saitama's Infinite Power is so scary. Like, for example, Saitama's, of course, absurd growth rate, but the speed of that growth rate. And of course, Saitama's absurd adaptability, and Saitama knocking on the door of Yahweh, because Saitama is basically transcending on so many fronts. So if you haven't seen that video, check it out, link in the box below, because this fight between Saitama and Garo, one of the best fights ever drawn in manga history. I will stand by that. One of the best fights ever drawn in manga history. It is so damn good, and it needs so much more love. I am praying to all the gods across the cosmos that when they animate it for season 3, oh, please, justice, make it one of the best fights anyone has ever seen, ever, across all entertainment mediums. Please! So I'm praying that whoever takes over the reins does a really damn good job. But for this video, we have to dive into more stuff, because that first video didn't cover everything. I need to cover everything, or at least what I think is everything, when it pertains to why Saitama's Infinite Power is, as I say it is, scary as all hell. And this is really scary stuff. Honest to God, it is. What I'm about to say. But not just yet, because what? Because I do have to put food on the table, because your boy is a growing boy. It is what it is. And I have to give a brief word for today's sponsor, which I would argue that anime manga readers should be aware of, which of course is none other than the Surfshark VPN. So most of you guys and gals are weebs, right? Right? It is what it is. That's who we are. That's what we are.
Goddamn right.
As a result of being us, sometimes we do go to these very dark and dangerous corners of the web. Some folks would say these spots of the web are not for common folk, right?
That's beautiful.
And when we go to these spots, we do so in the name of knowledge and, of course, for culture.
Correct.
However, as a result, we do leave ourselves vulnerable to outside forces. Whether it's phishing attempts, viruses, malware, you name it, there are going to be bad actors out there in the World Wide Web that are going to try and ruin your day. Well, Surfshark VPN, without a doubt, can shut down a lot of these bad actors. When it comes to your online security, online privacy, Surfshark has your back in so many unique ways with so many damn good features, like the clean web feature that can snuff out any malware, any viruses that may be in certain areas of the web that you're perusing. And mind you, Surfshark VPN can be utilized on all devices, no matter where you are in the world. Whether it's iOS, Android, Linux, Macs, Windows, doesn't matter, Surfshark VPN can have your back. And what's also really important too, is that your boy does have region-gated content.
Impossible.
It is what it is. But with Surfshark VPN, you can get access to my region-gated content, one, and then two, any other region-gated content on various other platforms like Disney Plus, like Hulu, like Netflix. Just simply change the location that you're located in, and then boom, just like that, you can gain access to a host of content that previously you had no way of getting. So check out Surfshark VPN in the description box down below and use code KOL, that is KOL, to get not only 83% off, but also 3 months free off of your purchase of Surfshark VPN. Thank you, Surfshark VPN, for being awesome. And now, back to the video. So that all being said, let's dive right into the more scary components of Saitama's Infinite Power. And it all starts here, in chapter 162. In this chapter, Garo and Saitama are going blow for blow, toe for toe, though Saitama is not even close to being serious. And we see Garo use a karate chop on Saitama. I think it's the same karate chop that he used on the Sage Centipede when he dropped down from orbit and cut the entire thing in half with a superb attack. However, for Saitama, what's superb for most, for him is nothing but an itch. Like a mosquito bite, not a big deal. But that karate chop, Saitama's headbutt, loses. And Garo's arm literally gets blasted off by Saitama's headbutt. However, a few chapters later, in chapter 168, Saitama does that very same move against Garo. He does a karate chop, lightning effects in the area from the sheer force of that karate chop. And it's a much more powerful attack because it's doing damage to a version of Garo who is copying Saitama himself. And of course, this is all a precursor to Saitama copying Garo's ultimate skill, the time-traveling twerk Triple T, and he's able to even copy Garo on a subatomic level. Even the antiparticles, he's copying that too. Garo could envision traveling back in time, but he himself couldn't do so because he lacked the power. But Saitama absolutely did not lack the power to do so, therefore he could go back in time. So Saitama is copying Garo twice during this fight, and on both occasions, not only is he copying Garo successfully, but actually superior. Both times the attacks are stronger and the ability itself is stronger. This actually reminds me of a very damn dope Toriko character called Midora. If you know, you know. A quick little plug-in. It's a very fun series, very damn dope series. Check it out, read it. Don't watch it, read it. Very important, right? And if you like good fights, really good and fun world building, some good old-fashioned shonen action, then Toriko is a series they gotta check out. And Midora has the ability to copy any ability that he sees with these things called mirror neurons. This even applies to more obscure things like food luck, which is like the Toriko version of luck / fate / causality, that kind of stuff. So he can even copy that kind of stuff with his ability to mirror neurons. And Saitama being able to copy Garo's techniques on a subatomic level, even the antiparticles, and go back in time, that copying skill that he has is extraordinarily potent. I would argue at least on par with Midora's copying skills. Without a doubt, it is extraordinarily potent. But there is a key thing here that Garo states about Saitama's ability that must be honed on. And this is where things get really, really scary. The key statement here is in that same chapter, 168, where Garo states, and I quote, that it's only Saitama who can master the power of God without taking God's hand. And he says this as Saitama is learning the time-traveling twerk. Even though it's like a fraction of the power of the great God, it's still the power that he stole from God. Garo could not time travel without getting the divine power of God. That means that God itself would have the ability to time travel. And there's actually hints for this in the 112 redrawn chapter, Sacrifice, where there is a mural that has Monster Lord Orochi in this mural that's hidden deep underground. And there's texts that Monster Lord Orochi can actually somehow read, quote, instinctively, end quote. And the text says, crossing the vast expanse of time, our God shall resurrect on this earth. Meaning that if God is the one that played a part somehow, some way in Monster Lord Orochi's creation, and the mural itself, because we see later on in that same chapter, when the entire underground structure starts to crumble, the true mural itself, the full mural, is actually God above Monster Lord Orochi, above the altar and the sacrifices. Various things like this indicate that in some capacity, somehow, some way, God could time travel. So if God can time travel and control time itself in some capacity, this could also apply to Saitama and other abilities that God can utilize. In theory, Saitama could also utilize. Because once again, what does Garo say? It's only Saitama who can master the power of God without taking God's hand. So all the things that you can argue are in the domain of God that we see over the course of the series, ideally in this fight between Saitama and Garo, which also involves characters like Blast and his Ginyu Force Guardians of the Galaxy. These abilities that we see them use over the course of this fight ideally in the future Saitama could utilize too. So for example, things like the gamma ray manipulation, things like gravity manipulation, things like dimensional manipulation, again, time traveling as well. All of these things that are in the dominion of the great God, Saitama could in the future utilize as well. And of course, Saitama isn't gonna go and take a PhD in physics and learn about things like black holes or gamma ray burst or subatomic particles or even like quantum realm stuff, right? Oh, no. That's not gonna be Saitama's MO, not even close. But in the future, if Saitama does fight against God, let's hit the final of the series. If God does something, there is a good chance that Saitama could simply see, and like the greatest Sharingan to ever exist in anime manga history, he would simply copy it on the spot. Remember what is stated by the narrator in chapter 165. When he stole the power of God, the fraction of the fraction of the fraction of the power of God, the narrator states that Garo gained knowledge of the flow of all energy and the behavior of all forces in the universe. Saitama supersedes Garo in power in spades. And again, the claim that Garo makes is that Saitama can utilize the power of God in theory. And we have seen several hints of Saitama already just naturally reaching this sort of stage, but kind of like unbeknownst to him. Like I said before in the last video, we're seeing Saitama punch through dimensions and entering spiritual and mental spaces where no physical bodies exist. In this fight, we're seeing Saitama literally grab hyperspace that is associated with alternate dimensions, wormholes, even parallel worlds. Saitama's grabbing this stuff. And what makes it even scarier is just knowing how he could just copy these things if he still wanted to on the spot. He copied time travel in a few seconds, just like watching someone not even do time travel, but the concept. Understand that. It's Saitama who sees it all the way through. That is a shocking revelation of Saitama's limitless power. And that leads to the segue of the last force that was mentioned at the end of the Saitama versus Garo fight. With the zero punch, he punched through the time stream, yo.
The first time somebody told me that, I don't know, I thought they were bullshitting.
With the zero punch, Saitama is able to take out Garo after Garo does the gamma ray burst. Therefore, all of the future events are somewhat reset. And the narrator states, and I quote, "Reversal of causality is unavoidable." Ish.
Nani?
I am adding the ish in there because there's clearly an ish. Because even though we see the universe repairing itself, where the hole that was blasted in the night sky by the Sirius series squared, they're being repaired because the future will never reach that point anymore after the zero punch. But somehow, some way, even though the cosmos is repairing itself, Saitama brought along Genos' core from the future timeline. Why didn't the core just fuse back into Genos? And that's the end of that, since causality is supposed to be reversing and it's absolutely unavoidable. But how does he keep that core?
Really makes you think.
What's also very interesting is that when he sees Genos at the end of that chapter, he is glad that Genos is, quote, still being alive, end quote. And Genos was able to jack into his future self's core and gain all the memories of the future timeline. So there is something clearly weird going on here when it comes to this causality reversal, because it's not reversing completely. There are still some things that are a bit funky. When he fuses with his past self, for some reason, his cojones, his goods are just hanging out. Why? That was the case last time, but it's the case now for some odd reason. What happened to his pants? And then Goro is somehow able to talk to Tario in the past, his future self is, through some sort of weird spirit before it dissipates. And then the past Garo, now the current timeline Garo, does not make an attack anymore on the heroes after losing his divine power, and the narrator speculates that it's the future timeline Garo having influence on the past Garo, now the current timeline Garo. So what does this mean? This means that causality could ultimately be just another, quote, force, end quote, within the universe. And because Saitama ultimately has no limits, that sort of force, causality, couldn't completely rein Saitama in. And if causality is in the dominion of God's control, in a future fight, if causality is used against Saitama, what could Saitama do? Utilize his Sharingan and copy whatever God is gonna do. Yes, obviously, it's more on the side of theory crafting since we haven't seen Saitama fight against God. And we don't know what God can do exactly, of course. But we can clearly see foundations of this sort of stuff being built over the course of this whole arc. Saitama is already breaking so many fundamental rules. And potentially, considering the Garo trajectory, where each and every time Saitama copied Garo's moves, the moves became stronger. If we apply that logic to Saitama and God, then Saitama could copy God's moves and techniques and abilities, and ultimately, Saitama would make them what? Stronger. He would get to the point where he's matching King in terms of causality manipulate. King is still without that number one when it comes to causality shenanigans. That's for damn sure. But Saitama in the series may even match King himself. Finally. So that is it. That is it when it comes to how I perceive Saitama's limitless power. And again, this video, more on the side of theory crafting, but I think it is without a doubt all within the realm of possibility for Saitama.